And sometimes when somebody shares their perspective with me and it doesn't fit within the construct of my beliefs, I have a choice. I can reject them, or I can ponder their perspective. I can sit with it and think about, how do I fit within the construct of that reimagined perspective? How do I change? How do I look different? How do I feel about it? Maybe at first, it creates a loss of faith. You're an idiot. Why did you ever believe what you believed? No, you're not an idiot. Nobody is an idiot. Everybody has their own perspectives, and just because somebody has a perspective that's different than you doesn't make them an idiot, doesn't make them dumb, doesn't make them crazy, doesn't make them stupid. Saying words like that just indicates maybe your own insecurity of your beliefs. That you have to disparage another one in their perspective in order to uphold your own perspective. And really, if your perspective is the truth, it stands on its own. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit. This is the week of June 30th to July 6th. This week, we will be covering 6 transits, highlighted by Venus's transit through Gemini, into Gemini. The theme of the week is relationship curiosity. So I'm curious to hear from you. How are you? How are you doing? Last week was 12 transits, and that was coming on the heels of weeks where we had 9 transits, 8 transits, 9 transits. There's just like so many transits every week. This week, only 6, which seems like a pretty moderate number, 6. So hopefully, if things have felt intense and heavy for you the last few weeks, maybe this week is feeling a little bit lighter. We can only hope. Or maybe the hope is, to press through and do the heavy work. But, either way, I feel like there's work being done. If the energy is if things are intense, then you want to take it easy on yourself. If things are easy, then you want to push. And maybe you're a little more intense. That's how I think of it. When things are going easy, you work hard. When things are hard, you take it easy. And so maybe this week is a week that is a little easier. I don't know. You tell me. I'm always curious to hear from you to learn how things are going. But, we're gonna dive into it here. Last week we had a conversation with Jean Wartroba, who is the author of the book of poems called Pretend All Is Well. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Jean. Very vulnerable. She's very open about her relationship with her parents and the difficulties that she experienced in growing up in her household that she has now transcribed into a beautiful book of poems. It's so wonderful to see how individuals can take that traumatic experience or challenging experience, difficult experience, and create art to help heal from the experience. So I hope my conversation with Jean was enjoyable and potentially healing for you if you reach out and want to purchase her book. 2 weeks ago, we had on Ricky King, astrologer, and discussed all the outer transit planetary movements, Jupiter into Cancer, Saturn and Neptune into Aries, Pluto into Aquarius, and Uranus transiting into Gemini, which happens next week. We'll highlight that again here on the weekly transit when Uranus transits into Gemini next week. This week it's Venus transiting into Gemini. This next week, I'm going to be interviewing Michaela Keller, a very light-hearted, inspiring individual. Michaela, very inspiring. I mean, she's, wow, so accomplished in all that she does in life. She's worked in the corporate world and has been very successful there, working with Zappos and Zappos.com and other various shoe companies. She is deeply involved in real estate, owns several properties. She is an investor in several downtown businesses in the Las Vegas area, the downtown Las Vegas Arts District, very active in her community. She's a descendant of a Mexican immigrant who came here with nothing, and when he died, he owned 28 properties. Just very inspiring. And you know, Michaela is one of my top listeners, vocal listeners. She's always posting on her Instagram account, Travel and Sparkle, about her experiences of listening to the weekly transit. So I feel very supported by her and all that she does to share what I'm sharing here on the weekly transit with her circle. She is a world traveler, and that's why her Instagram account is Travel and Sparkle, because she sparkles and she travels. And so we talk about what it's like to travel the world and, you know, her different preferences on hotels and airlines. And she just started a podcast as well. And so we tap into her podcast, what that's going to be about. She's already released one episode with her husband, which was a very interesting conversation between the two of them, where they discuss their family and what it's like to be parents and their relationship and what it's like to be a married couple. And they've been together for, now for 16 years they've been together. They haven't been married the whole time, but that's how long they've been together. So it's a very inspiring, uplifting story. I encourage you to listen. Of course, I continue my conversations this week, this Tuesday, with Delisa Hawking. Always a fun and insightful conversation with Delisa. She is the amazing 5th generation psychic. And wow, I mean, she is on point. Like a couple weeks ago, she was like, I think, it's something's happening this weekend. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be intense. I don't want to think about it, but I just, it's there. So I got to acknowledge it. And sure enough, on that same weekend, the U.S. bombed Iran. So, Delisa is always just so like tuned in with her guides. And I'm just doing my best to keep up and share the astrological reflections of everything that she is coming up with through her connections with her spirit guides. And, we're looking at world events and we're reflecting. Delisa's reflecting from her psychic point of view, and I'm reflecting from the astrological point of view. Delisa has been kind enough to have me on every Tuesday in June, and she's having me on every Tuesday in July. So we go live on her YouTube channel every Tuesday in July from starting at 3 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time and 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you can join us live, amazing. I will send out an email with the link. The link is also in the bio of my Instagram account. And if you're not able to make the live recording, it is a live recording, so it is recorded and you will be able to go back and view through the same link on Delisa's YouTube channel. The link in this episode is for last week's conversation with Delisa. I always put last week's conversation in this week's version or episode of the weekly transit. So if you missed my conversation from Delisa last week, the link is in the show notes here. I want to thank everyone who has been listening to me with Delisa, because she invited me back for another full month with her. I feel so fortunate to have these conversations with Delisa, and it's live. So there's people in the chat commenting and asking questions, and it's always a fun conversation. So thank you for being there, being there with Delisa and I, for being here with me here, for being here with me with my conversations with all the different people that I'm bringing on the weekly transit. I'm so grateful for your support. It means so much to me. So let's dive into the week. The theme of the week is relationship curiosity, and that has to do with Venus, the planet of relationships, and Gemini, the sign of curiosity. But the first transit of the week is the Sun in Cancer squaring the Moon in Libra. So this is the half moon. The half moon. Last week was the new moon in Cancer, and this week is the half moon in Libra. So the Sun is the giver of light, life, and vitality. It's transiting through the cardinal water sign symbolized by the crab, Cancer. It's forming a square, a stressful aspect with the Moon, the planet of emotions, in the cardinal air sign symbolized by the scales, Libra. Now this half moon occurs at 12:29 p.m. Pacific Daylight Savings Time on Wednesday, July 2nd. So, hopefully we're maybe feeling like we have a little bit of a break in the early part of the week because there's no exact transits occurring on Monday, Tuesday. It's not until Wednesday when things kind of bubble up midday with the Sun squaring the Moon, and you look up in the sky and you see that half moon. It's going to indicate tension between the shadow and the light. What is that tension that you're experiencing within yourself? It's such an interesting square between Cancer and Libra because, they seem, I don't know what other word to use other than, docile signs. Cancer is symbolized by the crab, and the crab does have those claws that can snap and pinch at you, but, it's not really a threatening creature. The claws are really just to protect itself and keep people away from it. Cancer is ruled by the Moon, the planet of emotions. Libra is ruled by Venus, the goddess of love. The Moon is transiting through Libra, and it's aligning with the Sun in Cancer. These are two really feminine energies, with Venus being the planetary ruler of Libra and the Moon being the planetary ruler of Cancer. So the tension here feels like there's something to do with the past. The Sun transiting through Cancer is bringing up our past. It's shining a light on our past. It's urging us to reflect upon who we are and who we've been, where we've come from, who we've come from. You think about your family. You think about the people who raised you, the people who raised them, and then thinking about your relationships. In what ways are your relationships similar to the relationships of those who raised you, those who you descend from? Well, my parents were divorced and now I'm divorced. Or my parents had a really tense relationship and now I'm in a tense relationship. What are we carrying from our past? And how is that connecting or expressing itself in our relationships? When the sun in Cancer squares the moon in Libra, there's a need for reflection there. And the light and the shadow, the half moon, it's about acknowledging what's in the light, but also not ignoring what's in the shadow. So is there something about your past or your relationships or your relationship to your past or your connection to your past and how it's being manifested in your relationships or expressed in your present day relationships that you're hiding from? What are you hiding from? What feels out of balance in your relationships? And how is what is out of balance reflective of your past? And maybe what is still out of balance from your past and now has manifested itself in your present reality. Because if there's something out of balance in your present day relationship, then it's tethered to something from your past that is out of balance and needs to be reconciled. So if you're feeling tension in your relationships, if you're feeling some adverse emotions on Wednesday, then maybe there's a need for you to reflect upon the root of this tension. If a weed sprouts up, you don't just cut the weed, you've got to pull it up by the root. So if there's tension that arises in your relationships or in your home life, then you've got to dig into the root so you can pull it out before it gets too strong, because it will grow back. If you don't pull it out by the root, it will grow back. And this is an opportunity to pull it out by the root. The second transit of the week involves Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, forming a conjunction, a powerful aspect with Uranus, the primordial sky god, the planet of revolution, rebellion, innovation, independence, the unexpected. Both are transiting at the final degree in Taurus, the fixed earth sign symbolized by the bull and ruled by Venus. This aspect occurs from Wednesday to Saturday, July 2nd to the 5th, with the exact conjunction on Friday, Frigg, Viernes, Venus, the day of Venus, July 4th. So the same day that the sun in Cancer squares the moon in Libra, the sign that's ruled by Venus, Venus transiting through the other sign that it rules, Taurus, begins to form a conjunction with Uranus, the planet of revolution and the unexpected. Something's coming to the surface in your relationships, potentially. There's a revolution occurring within your senses, your likes and dislikes. Are you joining the revolution? Are you willing to do things differently, radically different than before? Or are you clinging to the way things have always been? Because if you're clinging to the way things have always been, then you're not pulling the weed out by the root. You're allowing it to fester so it can grow stronger So lean into the pain. And the pain doesn't have to be extreme. You know, I'm a very hairy person. And the other day I had a Band-Aid on my arm. And, there's hair underneath the Band-Aid. And I don't want to pull that off slow. Because if I do, it hurts more than it would if I just rip it off. So this conjunction of Venus conjunct Uranus and Taurus may be like ripping off the Band-Aid. Ripping off the Band-Aid of your relationship. You've become aware of something. Something has come up in your relationship that has been brought to your attention, because what's been brought to your attention is tension. Tension, attention. And here it is. Tension. Are we going to ignore the tension? No. We've got to pay attention to the tension. We have to acknowledge that this is real, this is an issue, and it might be a difficult conversation that we need to have with somebody very close to us. But in order to soothe the tension, we have to have that difficult conversation. We have to acknowledge what's important to us. We have to acknowledge our values. This is not a time to avoid the confrontation. Rather, it is a time to engage in it. And perhaps engaging in it is quite different than how you would have addressed it in the past. And that in and of itself is pulling out the weed by the root, so that it doesn't grow back. Because we're moving into new territory now. And this is where relationship curiosity comes in. Because the third transit of the week is Venus transiting into Gemini. Gemini is the mutable air sign symbolized by the twins and ruled by Mercury, the messenger of the gods, representing consciousness, communication, coordination, the duality of life, seeing things from this perspective and then from another perspective, and changing our mind along the way. See, Venus conjunct Uranus in Taurus is breaking us out of the stagnation that exists within our relationships so that we can move towards something new, something fresh. Something spontaneous. Something that's like, oh wow, this? Okay, well I never thought about it that way. Venus transiting into Gemini brings us something new. Venus is transiting through Gemini through almost the entire month of July, July 4th to the 30th. So it transits into Gemini on Friday, July 4th. Friday is the day of Venus, because Friday is named for Frigg. Frigg is the Old Norse god which is associated with the Roman god Venus. To my Spanish-speaking friends, they know Viernes is Friday, Venus is Venus. You see the connection. So on the day of Venus, Venus transits into Gemini, where it will be until July 30th. Previous times that Venus has transited through Gemini is May 23rd to June 16th, 2024, April 11th to May 7th, 2023, June 22nd to July 17th, 2022, and May 8th to June 2nd, 2021. Think back to those dates for clues on what could be in store for you this time around as Venus transits through Gemini. Go back through your text messages, your emails, your photos on your cell phone to conjure up what was going on in your life during those dates. If you were born with key astrological points or planets in Virgo or Pisces, there may be challenges in relationships during this period. Because Virgo, mutable earth, Pisces, mutable water, square Gemini, which is mutable air. It creates a tense 90-degree aspect. So really prepare yourself for potential challenges in relationships that are meant to bring about something new. That's what Venus in Gemini is about. It's about curiosity. It's about listening to your partner. It's about being curious about your partner, whether that partner is a lover, a friend, or a business associate, a neighbor. What can you learn from your relationships? What do you want to learn from the people in your life? At the very base core of this transit, you want to be learning what other people value. What do you value? What's important to you? These are the questions that you want to be asking those that you're in relationship with. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It doesn't have to be heavy. It could be a lighthearted question like, why do you think the U.S. is bombing Iran? Or why did they bomb Iran? Maybe not a lighthearted question, that one, but even those questions, it's about like asking it from that light perspective. Like, I don't have the real answer. I don't know. I mean, I guess I can read an article or I can listen to what the politicians are saying and they're going to say different things. But what do you think? What do you think the reason is? What do you think about this? What are your thoughts on that? How did you come to that conclusion? I'm curious to know. It's about really sort of creating trust in communication between other people, where we're not going in and assuming that we have the answer. I have my opinion. That's not necessarily the answer. But you know what would make my opinion stronger? More information. That's the beauty of Gemini. You know, people get frustrated by Gemini. And especially, or perhaps one area of frustration is in relationships with Gemini people, whether that's a Gemini sun or maybe it's a Gemini Venus or a Gemini moon or a Gemini rising. It's like never quite sure where you stand because they're changing their perspective so frequently. There's nothing wrong with them. As they gather new information, they form new thought patterns. So with Venus transiting through Gemini from July 4th to the 30th, we are all experiencing what it is like to be a Venus in Gemini, which means being curious about all sorts of different people. Hang out with a variety of different people. If you're single, this is a great time for you to be connecting or dating several different people, especially because now we're in the Mercury retrograde shadow, so it doesn't have to be serious right now. It shouldn't be serious. It should be light. It's like, hey, let's just see what this is. Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Let's sit down. You know, let's feel each other out. But not, cling to each other. This is like the speed dating period of the year when Venus transits through Gemini, where it's like, you sit down with somebody, you have a 10-minute conversation with them, and you move on to the next. Because we want to keep it light. We want to learn about a lot of different people. And as we gain information, we learn new things, we change our perspective, we connect with different people. And it just kind of, it's like a ripple effect. It's like, wow, I learned so much. I was talking to Sally, and now I'm talking to Sarah. And then I was talking to Jenny. And what I learned is, I think Sally, she's not the right match for me, but I think she'd like my friend Jim. Maybe I should introduce them. So this is a period of connecting. Connecting through shared ideas and experiences. And we know that they're shared ideas and we understand their experiences because we've asked the question. And we've allowed those that have connected to us to share a little bit about themselves. Hopefully, by July 30th, the world is all a little bit closer because we've spent so much time listening to each other. We've learned a lot, and we've connected people that feel appropriate to other people in our lives. They're not for me, but they are maybe for that person. Let me connect the two. We're not just tossing away people and ideas. We're gathering them, and we're connecting them. We're a conduit of information. So I hope this Venus in Gemini period is fun for you. It might be confusing. It might be confusing. You might think that you really like someone and then they turn you off. It's like, I don't like that person anymore. They're like, what? You don't like me? You said you liked me yesterday. Yeah, I know. I don't know. I changed my mind though. I thought about that thing you said and now I don't like you. So it could be exhausting, but hopefully it brings more clarity than confusion. And of course, I believe that it's all how you're working with the energy, and hopefully that's why you're listening here, and hopefully the information that you're receiving here is giving you that perspective that's going to help you keep things light and not take things too seriously in your relationships or the relationships that you don't have, that you're just meeting during this period. Hopefully you're keeping it light and it's fun and it's airy and, we're all a little bit dizzy but giddy afterwards. And of course, if you're curious to learn how this Venus transit through Gemini is affecting you directly, I encourage you to contact me for a reading, to schedule a reading at theweeklytransit.com. Also wanted to mention that my moon cycle classes are available for new enrollment for the next lunar cycle, which will be the new moon in Leo and the full moon in Aquarius. So if you're interested in learning about how the next lunar cycle, the new moon and the full moon specifically, will be affecting you directly, I encourage you to enroll in my moon cycle classes at theweeklytransit.com. The fourth transit of the week involves Neptune beginning its retrograde transit in Aries. Yeah. Neptune beginning its retrograde transit through Aries at 2 degrees and 10 minutes. This happens on guess which date? July 4th. 4th of July, Friday, 4th of July. I don't know. Maybe 4th of July is going to be kind of a wild day. It's the 250th anniversary of, no, that's next year. I'm jumping ahead. That's next year, the 250. This is 249 for the U.S. So, I don't know. I'll be curious to see. But Neptune beginning its retrograde transit on July 4th at 2 degrees and 10 minutes in Aries curious to hear how this is affecting you. It feels like every time Neptune goes retrograde, I hear from people and they're like, I felt Neptune go retrograde. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. Or not cool, I don't know. But, we're delving deeper into the unconscious. Like we're already underwater and now we're being pulled deeper into the unknown. The pressure is building, the uncertainty growing. We're losing faith in ourselves. Maybe I shouldn't be laughing. But, I'm a Scorpio, so I like to keep it light when it's dark. And, Neptune retrograde in Aries. It's going to retrograde back into Pisces. Retrogrades back into Pisces on December 10th. So we still got quite a bit of time of Neptune transiting through these just first 3 degrees from 2 to 1 to 0 before it finally gets to 29 degrees in Pisces. That doesn't happen on December 10th. That's what December 10th is when Neptune goes direct in Pisces. So Neptune actually transits into Pisces. That happens. Let's get it right, Scott. Neptune has already confused you, and you're reading the wrong dates and confusing everyone. So let's not do that, Scott. Let's see. Okay, so October 22nd is when Neptune transits retrograde into Pisces. So we've got pretty much July, the rest of July, all of August, all of September, and then like the first 3 weeks of October, where Neptune will be transiting retrograde through Aries before it transits retrograde into Pisces. So these next, July, August, September, these next 4 months, almost 4 months, is deep introspection in terms of yourself. Who are you? Aries is the cardinal fire sign, symbolized by the ram, ruled by Mars, the planet of authenticity. It's about taking an authentic look at yourself and reimagining the dream of who you are. In what ways have you lost faith in yourself? In what ways are you confused about yourself? Reimagine the dream. But in order to reimagine the dream, you need to acknowledge where you are, where you might feel uncertain about who you are, or how you got here, or why you're here, where you're going. I don't know where I'm going to go because I don't know who I am. I don't even know how I got here. Okay, great. You're in the right spot because that's what Neptune in Aries is about. Through this process, you may come to idealize yourself. You may come to idealize your sense of faith, whatever higher power you believe in. There may be a intense form of righteousness where you are even aggressive in defending your faith and beliefs. Because God forbid, with Venus in Gemini showing you something different from someone else in terms of who you are, no, that's not true. That person's the problem. There's something wrong with them. My belief is the only belief that works. And there's a real defensiveness in terms of our faith right now. Well, as Neptune drags backwards very slowly through Aries, it's going to bring up those doubts or sense of confusion, which maybe through that experience you're doubling down in your intensity in terms of your beliefs, or maybe you're finding humility within yourself and compassion. I didn't know that. I never saw things from that perspective. I learned something new, and I'm admitting that I'm not an omnipotent God. So how could I know everything? Why would I, double down on a belief when it's a belief, it's a faith? And there can always be new information that comes through. And I've received new information, I see it from a different perspective, and I'm willing to acknowledge that. I'm willing to acknowledge that there are more perspectives than my own. And those perspectives are just as valid as mine. And sometimes when somebody shares their perspective with me and it doesn't fit within the construct of my beliefs, I have a choice. I can reject them, or I can ponder their perspective. I can sit with it and think about, how do I fit within the construct of that reimagined perspective? How do I change? How do I look different? How do I feel about it? Maybe at first, it creates a loss of faith. You're an idiot. Why did you ever believe what you believed? No, you're not an idiot. Nobody is an idiot. Everybody has their own perspectives, and just because somebody has a perspective that's different than you doesn't make them an idiot, doesn't make them dumb, doesn't make them crazy, doesn't make them stupid. Saying words like that just indicates maybe your own insecurity of your beliefs. That you have to disparage another one in their perspective in order to uphold your own perspective. And really, if your perspective is the truth, it stands on its own. It doesn't need to be disparaging to anyone else. If your perspective is the truth, then it's open to receiving new information. So as Neptune drags back slowly through Aries retrograde, there's some deep spiritual work that each and every one of us needs to do. Neptune will be direct in Pisces on December 10th. Neptune moved into its retrograde shadow on March 13th. So where Neptune is on December 10th is where Neptune was on March 13th. Neptune moves out of its retrograde shadow on March 30th of next year. Which is really interesting because Neptune transited into Aries this year on March 30th. So next year on March 30th, Neptune is going to be exactly where it is on July 4th of 2025. Just interesting threads, how they all connect. Neptune moved into Aries on March 30th, 2025. On March 30th, 2026, Neptune will be exactly where it was when Neptune began its retrograde transit in Aries on July 4th, 2025. But Neptune in its retrograde shadow for more than a year, from March 13th, 2025 to March 30th, 2026. It's very slow, and it's intentional. Because it takes us a long time to really make peace or to gain clarity of what's going on in our psyche. Like this is burrowed to the depths of who we are. Like if you're reacting aggressively when somebody has a different opinion than you or a different perspective than you, then it's rooted in some sort of fear that exists within yourself. What is that? Where does that stem from? What guilt, shame, regret, or blame has sprouted from that fear? So much to ponder with Neptune transiting retrograde through Pisces. Pisces, Aries. So confused, I'm saying the wrong words. The fifth transit of the week involves Venus, and the sixth transit of the week involves Venus. So both the fifth and the sixth transits of the week involve Venus in Gemini. And of course, where is it connecting? This is the aspect that is happening. It happened with the sun a little over a week ago, or around a week ago, when it transited into Cancer. It's hitting those two planets in Aries we just talked about. One is Neptune, and the other is Saturn. Saturn's the god of wealth and time, the planet of restriction, responsibility, hard work, achievement, authority. Transiting through Aries conjunct with Neptune. Reimagining the dream of what authority means to you. Dissolving the traditional perspective of what authority is. Saturn is the structure. Neptune is the energy that dissolves the structure. It's like Saturn's the earth and Neptune's the ocean. It's softening the earth. And then here comes Venus in Gemini. So as we're meant to be listening and learning and connecting with others, the aspects, the sextile to Saturn and Neptune in Aries, is invigorating these questions. It's helping us take responsibility for who we are in relationships, how we show up in our relationships. Do I listen to the people that are speaking to me? It's helping us reimagine what relationships mean to me. Helping me reimagine my relationship to authority, helping me reimagine my relationship to myself as the authority. Do I have the confidence and courage to listen to others? I need to own that. Maybe I don't. If I don't, that's where I hang my hat. No, I don't have the energy to listen to people. And it may ebb and flow. Sometimes you have the energy to listen to others. Sometimes you don't. But this is bringing that to the surface. It's helping you really come to terms with who you are in your relationships. To take an authentic look at yourself and to take an authentic look at those that you're in relationship with, because as you connect with others and ask them questions, you might learn things about them and you're like, you know what? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to hang out with this person as much as I have in the past. Like, no offense or, nothing negative here, but I'm just starting to understand that maybe we don't vibe in the same way that we used to. And I didn't learn that until I started asking you questions about this, that, or the next thing, and I started to realize that these are perspectives that don't really align with me. Funny to be saying that after I was just talking about Neptune and being able and transiting through Aries and being able to really reflect upon ourselves and our own philosophy. So there's challenges here where it's like you're asking somebody a question, they're giving you an answer, you're like, that doesn't really fit with me. So do I stay? Do I continue engaging with this person? Or not? There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever feels right to you is what you should do. If you decide to stick around in this relationship, then this transit, which by the way begins on, you guessed it, July 4th, Friday, Frigg, Viernus, the day of Venice, the day of Venus, and continues through Monday, Tuesday, July 7th and 8th, with the exact sextile occurring on Sunday, July 6th. So this is an aspect that begins on Friday and continues through the weekend into the early part of next week, which will be coupled by Uranus's transit into Gemini, which we will get into next week's episode. But if you want to hear, some of that now, you can go back and listen to my conversation with Ricky King, my most recent conversation with her. But we're being invited to be curious and to listen and to take responsibility for what we want to hold on to and what we want to let go of. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. If you want to stay, great. You want to go, great. Do what feels right to you. But acknowledge what you're doing. Take responsibility for your reasoning. If you stay, and maybe somebody says something uncomfortable to you when you ask the question, if you decide to stay and you want to, recommit to the relationship, maybe there's more questions that you need to ask. Because sometimes somebody will say something, you're like, oh God, that's offensive. No. Rather than just leaving the room, maybe you say, tell me more about that perspective. Like, where does that come from? How did you come to that conclusion? Maybe as the conversation continues, the air is cleared. And it's not festering. And you feel lighter, and you feel like you can be more authentic in your relationships. Because when Venus in Gemini aligns with Saturn and Neptune in Aries, it's encouraging you to engage in the conflict, to not be scared off by the conflict. If there's tension here, well, does leaving really alleviate the tension, or does it make it more tense? It all depends. Like, if you got the answer that you needed, then you can move on. But if you got an answer and it makes you uncomfortable, so you leave, but then you have more questions, well, then it's going to fester. So do you have the courage to ask the questions that you need to ask in order to reimagine the relationship, reimagine yourself within the relationship? Do you have the courage to take responsibility for asking the questions that are going to satisfy your curiosity? It's sometimes scary to ask those questions. But you are certainly being supported through the end of the week to clear the air in your relationships. If there's anything that's been stuck, any sort of like rock in the shoe in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, there's that thing that they brought up and I never addressed it. Now's the time to do it. So I hope this is helpful to you. And I hope that the conversation, the one-way conversation that I'm having here, is enlightening you in some way or lightening your load, especially with Venus's transit through Gemini, so that you're learning something new this week and it's setting you off so that you fly and feel empowered in the week ahead. And I'll look forward to reconnecting with you next week. Thank you for listening to the weekly transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.